Basically, a practical, we will give you a practical also, so it will be clear to you. So meanwhile, we will discuss something about this electron microscopy as a tool of detection of plant viruses. So electron microscope, as you know, is a very vital instrument for the detection of plant viruses. So you cannot see the virus particle in an ordinary microscope. So if you have this electron microscope facility, we can within a short period, within a half an hour, you can know that which type of virus you are dealing with. So it means we can get a result very means quickly we can get the result within half an hour, and you can see the nature of evidence of the virus particle, whether it is a rod shaped and spherical or any other shape of the virus, that we can see with the help of the electron microscope. And these information actually gives us the virus for the classification of plant viruses. So which group or which class the virus belong, it gives us some idea about the grouping of the viruses. So as you know that yesterday Dr. Baranwal also discussed, the microscope was discovered in 1930s by Knoll and Ruska, and the first commercial microscope was developed by a German company, Siemens, in 1939, and I will just, you might be knowing that the difference between this electron microscope and other microscope, the basic thing is the resolution power. What are the resolution power of this compound microscope is 200 nanometers, and scanning electron microscope is about 10 nanometer, and this transmission electron microscope, the present day transmission electron microscope has resolution power up to 0.1 nanometer. So these are the two gentlemen, Ruska and Knoll microscope. They developed this microscope, and this Ruska was given actually awarded Nobel Prize for his novel finding in 1986, after about more than 50 years of his discovery. So this is the prototype of electron microscope. The topmost part is the electron gun, where the source of electron, and then there are different type of lenses, condenser lens and objective lens and specimen holder, and then projector lenses, and finally you can see your image in the fluorescent screen. And this red arrow, actually this is the path of the electrons, electron beam. So this is again some refresh your knowledge, the basic differences about our light microscopy and electron microscopy. The source of illumination in light microscopy is visible light or electrical light. Whether the source of illumination in case of electron microscope is a beam of electrons. And the lens type is in light microscopy is the glass lens, and whereas in electron microscope these are made up of electromagnetic lenses. And magnification we can use in the electron microscope, we can increase by changing the lens like 10x, 40x, 100x and so on. Whether in case of electron microscope, actually we have to change the current. So according to the current, actually we can increase the magnification in case of electron microscope. And here we are using the eyepiece for viewing the specimen. In electron microscope we are using the fluorescent screen or the CCT camera we are using to the for viewing our specimen. And here no vacuum is required for light microscopy. Whether in transmission electron microscope, the complete beam actually that needs a vacuum system, because the air molecules, they react with the electron beam. So that's why they travel in a complete vacuum system. Resolution power, as you know, this is 200 nanometer, here 0.1 to 0.2 nanometer. Magnification maximum you can go up to 2000x. In the modern day electron microscope, we can have up to 800,000x. So the basic principle actually of electron microscope is, so when a beam of electron passes through the specimen, so the part of it is transmitted and it is seen projected on the fluorescent screen. So the image can be seen by the observer. So this is the procedure, and you might be knowing that electron microscopes are two types. One is scanning, other is transmission. So it is commonly known as SAM or TAM. So the basic difference of scanning electron microscope and transmission electron microscope is, in the transmission electron microscope, as I told you, so when the electron beam actually generates, the beam comes and it has to pass through the specimen. The specimen, it will pass through and then transmitted image you can see in the fluorescent screen. And this specimen should be very, very thin, so that electron beam can be easily penetrated through the specimen. So that image you can see in the fluorescent screen. Whether in case of scanning electron microscope, so when the procedure is more or less same, but when electron beam actually generates from the source, it will hit your specimen. Here in this case of the specimen is being thick, is very thick, so beam cannot penetrate. So then backscattering of electrons takes place. So you can see the surface structure in case of scanning electron microscope, and in transmission electron microscope you can see the internal structure. So this is a structure of one pollen grain. So you can see the difference. If you see the pollen grains under transmission electron microscope, you will find the internal structure with a nucleus and other organelles, cell organelles. Whether in case of scanning electron microscope, you will find the surface morphology of the pollen grains. So this is the basic difference between scanning and electron microscope. So I think you might have seen electron microscope earlier. Idea about electron microscope? Okay. So in electron microscopy, actually for preparation of sample, as in light microscopy, we are using a glass slide. For you cut your section, put on the glass, then stain it or whatever you want to see, you can see it. But in electron microscope, actually we need a special kind of structure known as grids for putting our specimen on the grids. So these grids are made up of different metals like copper, nickel, gold, silver, molybdenum, titanium, beryllium, and many other metals. And these grids are of different mesh size, say 100 mesh, 200 mesh, 300 mesh, 400 mesh. Means each grid has 400 holes, 300 holes, 300 mesh means 300 holes, like that. According to our experiment, we have to select the grids, different mesh size. And another important aspect is, before using these grids, we have to coat these grids with a thin carbon film. So coating is required to means put your specimen on the grids. If you are not coating these grids with the carbon film, so what happens when you put your extraction or anything on the grid, so it will pass through. So you have to coat with the carbon film. So this carbon film are around 30 to 35 nanometer, depending on also your experiments. And after coating, you can put your sample on the grid. So then you can process. So these are the basic procedures. And for ultra thin sectioning, actually, you don't need any coating of the carbon film. So direct you can put your section, ultra thin section, as you can see in this yellow photograph, the ultra thin section you can directly put on the grid. So now there are the procedures of how we are using this processing the electron microscopy. So you might have gone through the literature. You will find, if you see the virus paper, any virus paper, you will find the leaf dip preparation. It's a very common method of preparation of the samples. So what this method is actually? So we have to take this one grid in a forceps, put a drop of negative stain over the grid, and then you tear the infected leaf, and then this torn leaf actually you touch on the negative stain. So what happens, the virus particles are very small and it remains in the millions of particles are there. So if you touch that torn surface of the leaf, the virus particle will adsorb on the grid. So this is a very simple method, but it is applied only where this leaf tissue is very soft. So if you use the hard tissue, say for example rice leaf or wheat leaf, any other leaf, so in that case we cannot use this method. So we have to use another method. So this is in general means principle. If the soft tissue having that we can use this type of this method, leaf dip preparation. Then you have to wash it with distilled water and then dry the grid for some time in the room temperature only, and then you can see this in the electron microscope. So this another method actually, this is homogenization, was what I was telling just now, where the tissue is very hard. So we have to grind it. In a sort you take about 2 millimeter of tissue in a glass slide itself, and then with the help of a glass rod you grind it with a phosphate buffer, and then you make the extract. Our idea is actually to release the virus from the cell. So you have to grind it, and then you put this extract over the grid. So then the same procedure, you wash it, then you have to stain it, and then you observe after some time after drying the grid. And in some cases the crushing is also required. So crushing means like some viruses like tospoviruses and other viruses, they are very sensitive. They are having the membrane, lipid membrane outside. So when you grind it, the membrane actually disrupts. So then the shape of the virus is actually, you don't know that whether while seeing that the virus is there or not, because the shape actually changed because of the membrane has denatured. So in that case actually we are doing the crushing of the sample with the help of the blade, just to crush it very gently and release the virus from the cell. So these are the basic methods of extraction of the samples for electron microscopy. Then the extraction cocktail. So for different viruses we need a different type of buffer, and its molarity of the buffer, pH of the buffer of different viruses. Generally we are using 0.07 molar pH and 6.5. But if you see the literature in the paper, for different person they are using different kind of buffer for their extraction and their result. They are getting good result in the other buffer. For example, the CMB should be extracted in 0.5 molar phosphate buffer, pH 7, and some Gemini viruses are used for 0.1 molar tris buffer, and potiviruses are extracted best in the phosphate buffer containing 0.01 molar EDTA. So these are the some additives also we have to use while extracting the virus from the cell. And sometimes glutaldehyde is a fixative. Glutaldehyde you might have seen, it is a fixative. So this is also used for to give sometimes a good result where when you are not getting the virus particle. And some samples like some grape wine and other apple and all, some other samples which are having some phenolic compounds and other inhibitors in the plants. So we are using some additives like polyethylene glycol or PVP on the extraction of for extraction of the samples for preparation of the virus preparation. And sometimes the sodium sulphite also improves the extraction of the grape vine fine leaf virus. And reducing agent commonly used for virus purification like 2 molar ascorbic acid and 2 mercaptoethanol. They are also used for better result. And some proteolytic degradation, some protease inhibitors are also there in the some plant samples. So then we are using some inhibitors like PMSF, phenyl methyl sulfonyl fluoride. They are this is used to inhibit the protease inhibitor, and sometimes twin-20 also used for good preparation of your samples. And fixation actually, as I just told you, so this glutaldehyde is a very good fixative, is a primary fixative, and osmium tetroxide is a secondary fixative. So sometime for this tospoviruses, they are highly unstable virus. So when you grind it, so this may denature actually because of their membrane will be broken, and then their shape will be changed. So then it is very difficult to recognize the particles are there or not. So in that case, what we are doing actually, we are fixing the sample in the glutaldehyde at least for overnight. You fix, so then you crush the sample, and then you see, then you can get the better result of using this glutaldehyde fixatives. As I was discussing about the different means leaf tissue. For by and large, actually, we are selecting the leaf tissue for our preparation of the sample. So leaves are the most common samples used for electron microscopy. But in some cases, actually, like in other like raspberry, strawberry, they are having the tannins. Cassava, yam, they are having latex, and okra, horse gram, glutinous extract. So in that case, we can use some other part of the plant. And in some cases, actually, petals, seed, and roots are also proved to be a very good extraction procedure for the viruses. And sometimes, actually, the vectors are also used for preparation. This virus, you can extract the virus from the leafhopers and whitefly and other vectors, nematode and mite also you can use for extraction of your virus particle from these are the samples. So the suitable tissues actually, so generally, as I told you that leaf we are using the mostly for the virus preparation. So in general, actually, this leaf tissue for one leaf we are using, you know, the cork borer number 5. You means cut one leaf and the 3 different portion of the leaf. So then you grind it. So it will having a means sort of all the area of the leaf you are using. So 2-3 infected leaves and cork borer number 5. And then basal area of the leaves on the either side of the midrib are suitable. So sometimes we are using our sample should have the midrib. Why it should have midrib? Yes, some viruses they are actually phloem bound, like begamoviruses or luteoviruses and clusteroviruses. they are actually phloem bound virus. So if you use without midrib, so you won't find anything, you won't find the virus particle. So in that case actually we have to use the midrib. For unknown sample actually you have to use the midrib plus some part of other than the midrib. So both the tissue will be covered. So those samples you have to grind, then you are the possibility of having the virus. And some Nepoviruses, the all part of infected plant including seed, pollen and apical meristem. So any part you can use in case of Nepoviruses. And bromoviruses and thymoviruses also, almost every tissue is taken for the extraction of the virus. So after extraction actually we have to use this staining. So staining, as electron microscope was discovered in 1930s, so the earlier method was actually the shadow casting. It was developed by Williams and Wyckoff in 1944. So what was this method actually? There is a machine where you can put the heavy metals like chromium, gold, palladium and alloy or platinum. Then you put your preparation on the grid and then spray this metal dust over the grid. So there will be a shadowing, shadow will be there after this metal deposition on the grid. So this will give the idea about the virus shape of the virus particle. Those days people were using this shadow casting. Like you can see this TMB particle, shadow casting, it looks like this kind of structure. Next. So, but in 1959 actually Briner and Horne developed another staining for better contrast, is a staining by the negative stains. So negative stains are actually, they are a very heavy metal stains like phosphotungustic acid, sodium silicotungustate, uranyl acetate, uranyl formate and other stains. So then why it is called negative stain? Yeah, it will stain the background only, background of this specimen, not the specimen itself. So you will have the better contrast. So after this method was developed, so electron microscopy, we are getting very, very good image of virus particle by staining, negative staining. So these are some viruses morphology after you stain this virus and see under this electron microscope. So you will find having the different morphology of the viruses, like if you have this rod shaped, this is a Tobamo group CGMMB, and the isometric virus, these are this cucumber mosaic virus, and some flexuous rod like potato virus Y. And the alpha-alpha mosaic virus, it has the 4 component, one is spherical and other are bacilliform particles, multi-component viruses, alpha-alpha mosaic virus. And then Bedna virus is a bullet-shaped particles, bacilliform particles having these are the particles, and the Begamo viruses like these whitefly transmitted Begamo viruses are like these twin particles you can see in the electron microscope. Similarly, some other viruses like the sunflower necrosis and ELAR virus and orchid flag virus is a bullet-shaped particles, and Tospo viruses long about 100 to 110 nanometer diameter with a membrane, and some other viruses like southern bean mosaic, again isometric virus particle, and this rice tungru bacilliform and spherical, both particles, one this bullet shaped and another is this spherical one, and some mycoviruses also, they are also spherical. So with after seeing these type of morphology, you have some idea about this virus. So accordingly you have to plan your further study about this grouping of the virus. So another application of electron microscopy is immunosorbent electron microscopy. So immunosorbent electron microscopy is more or less similar as you are doing ELISA. But in ELISA you are getting the final result is the color. If you are using alkaline phosphatase, you will get yellow color. If you are using other enzyme, you will get different color. So right now you are using alkaline phosphatase, so your end product will be yellow in color. So but in electron microscope actually it is called as a seeing is believing. You are seeing the virus particle with your own eyes. So there are actually the two procedures are two methods are this ISEM, electron immunosorbent electron microscopy. One is trapping, other is decoration. So trapping is actually usually done when your virus particles are very, very low concentration. Say you are working in some host or some viruses, the host you are not getting a good concentration of the virus in the EM, you are not finding any particle. So but if you have the antibody, you coat your grid with the antibodies first. You have to coat your, like you are coating the plate. So here you have to coat your grids with the antibody. For trapping generally we are using dilution like 1:500 or 1:1000 dilution. So after coating you have to put these grids on a incubation for 1 hour or 30 minutes in the 37 degrees centigrade incubation. Then after washing, then you have to put the antigen. Your sample you have to put. So what will happen actually if you do this and you see the number of virus particle will increase. Say for example without coating you are getting say 1 or 2 particles, but here after coating this antibody, after trapping the antibody, you will find more number of particles of the viruses. So this is the first part of the trapping. So this method already we have discussed. So antibody, so yes, this is the result. We have one samples having this cucumber mosaic virus. So when without coating antibody, you will find 4 or 5 particles. But when you trap the antibody with the antigen, the homologous antibody, so you will find a large number of particles. The particle means number of particles will increase. So this will be a good idea for about your this virus. And another advantage is of this trapping actually. Suppose we are using the crude sap. Generally we are using crude sap only from the leaf. So when you are coating the antibody, so you will get less number of this host debris on the grid. So your preparation will be rather clean as without coating grids. So this is another advantage. You are getting the clean preparation after coating. So another part is the decoration. So decoration actually it was a technique used in plant virology by Milne and Lusoni in 1977. So what they did actually, so in the first step actually you coat your virus, you coat your grid with the virus antigen, and after that you take the antibody. After washing your grid, you put your grid on the antibody. So here we are using the antibody dilution is 1:50 or 1:100 antibody dilution, and after this washing and staining the grid, you can see the difference, this result. You see this is a onion yellow dwarf virus. Without coating you can see there is a all the virus particles are there, clean particles are there. But when you have decorated with the onion yellow dwarf virus antibody, so this antibody halo you can see all around the virus particle. So these are actually this dark color is the antibody has binded the virus particle. So this gives us a clear idea that this particular virus is a onion yellow dwarf virus. So this is the best means application of electron microscopy for your identification of the viruses using this ISEM technique. So another combination, actually, when we have a virus in a mixture, same kind of shape type of particles, say flexuous particles or spherical particles, they remains in the mixture. There are more than one particle or more than two particles are there. So in that case, actually, we have to use again this antibody. Say for example, in the first slide you can see this Indian citrus ring spot virus and in citrus yellow vein clearing virus, they are more or less morphology is same. So when we were working on this virus, Indian citrus ring spot virus, we developed the antibody, and we found another sample of this. Actually, this Indian citrus ring spot virus is very common in the Kinnu mandarin. So sometime we found that these some other citrus lime plants were having some different symptoms. So when we see under electron microscope, we saw the particle same like Indian citrus ring spot virus, but when we actually used the antibody decoration we did, so few particles are decorated and few remains undecorated. So it clearly indicates that this particular virus is not a Indian citrus ring spot virus, but it is a different virus. Though it is a morphology is more or less same, but serologically it is a different. So this way actually you can differentiate your means this diagnosis, and similarly in the isometric viruses, this black gram mottle virus is a isometric particles. So we developed the antibody again, and so when we did the decoration, so some particles are decorated and some particles remain undecorated. So it means there is a mixture of viruses, two viruses are there. So another virus is the black gram mild mottle virus. It is still uncharacterized virus. We have not characterized this particular virus. So but this indicates that this decoration, this immunosorbent electron microscopy is very means you can detect very clearly of the two different viruses using the antibody. So the general application of immunosorbent electron microscopy, that already the serological identification of the viruses and detection of virus in mixture. When you have the different more than one virus is there, you can detect with the help of antibody, and detection of partial degradation of the coat protein. Sometime actually what happens, you are in the purification process, the coat protein of the virus is denatures and it will attach to the another virus particles, and if it is there in the mixture. So it is called the means this partial encapsulation. So that also we can, with the help of electron this ISEM, you can detect, and the quantitative estimation and degree of relationship, that also can be determined by this ISEM, and the measurement of antiserum titer. As you are using ELISA also for titer of your antibody, suppose you are developing antibody, then finally you have to determine the titer of your antisera. So you have to write whether it is a 1:1000, 1:2000, 1:5000, that you are estimating with the help of ELISA checkerboard for your antibody determination, this titer determination. So similarly, we are also detect this antibody titer with the help of ISEM, and the localization of particular antigen on the virus surface. This is also a very common. Yes, this another application is actually the immunogold labeling. That also we are doing for detection of some viruses. Actually, immunogold labeling For viruses like tospoviruses, where actually this membrane are there, so when you use the decoration, so you never know that because of this thickness of the wall, so there is a stain, heavy stain means deposition. So you will not know whether it is a really a decoration, the antibody is working or antibody is not working. So in that case actually we are using the immunogold labeling. So what we are doing actually immunogold labeling. So first we have to absorb the virus particle on the grid, then the blocking as you are doing in the ELISA, blocking with the BSA, we have to block it. Then we have to decorate with the antibody, primary antibody. Then we have to coat with the grid with the antibody. Then another step actually you have to coat your antibody conjugated with the colloidal gold particles. The gold particle will bind, you will see in your preparation. Then again you have to wash it and stain and dry and then observe. So this is you see the difference. This is a tospovirus particles. Having these are without decoration actually, but they looks like there is maybe some decoration is there. So it will be confusing actually. So in that case we are using this gold particles. So gold particle will bind this your surface, this antibody will bind that virus particle surface all along the virus particle. So this is a very means very important decoration, means sorry, this checking of your antibody whether it is really working or not using this immunogold labeling. And immunogold labeling also we can do with the filamentous viruses also. Just to show you, I have put one picture of this. This is a Hepiostroma mosaic, a potivirus. We have developed antibody and then the gold labeling all along the virus particles. So then electron microscopy has other applications like to study the inclusion bodies. So each virus have means what are the inclusion bodies? They are actually virus induced proteins only, proteins. So they may be in the nucleus or they may be in the cytoplasm. So different kind of inclusion bodies are there developed by different viruses. So these inclusion bodies we can see only by ultra thin sectioning. So we have to cut the section, then we have to observe these inclusion, what type of inclusions are there, that only we can see after this ultra thin sectioning. Like maybe 15-20 years back actually, when we don't have the molecular biology knowledge, so people were using for virus identification only these methods, like this ultra thin sectioning and what are the inclusion bodies. So on that basis actually they were characterizing the virus. So these are the different kind of means inclusion, and they may be in the nucleus or in the cytoplasm. And this nuclear inclusion body, generally this fibrillar ring is there in the typical for the begamoviruses. You will find in the nucleus of begamoviruses the fibrillar ring. And in other viruses you will find a different kind of, for rod shaped viruses, fibrous and paracrystalline structure, and crystalline, some isometric and rod shaped viruses like Kukumo, Como and Nipah viruses, and cylindrical inclusion bodies, potiviruses and scrolls and laminated plates or pinwheels. So these are the some structures developed by viruses, and that we can see by ultra thin sectioning. Yes, these are the some structures of pinwheel structure. It is a characteristics of potyviruses. You can see this typical pinwheel-like structure developed when the plants are infected with the potyviruses. Yes, this is a fibrillar ring by a begomovirus. This is a characteristics of begomoviruses. In the nucleus of the cell, you will find this fibrillar ring. And some of our work here, we have this Chirke disease. Dr. Vikas Mandal was working earlier on this disease. So we have found this half actually crystalline pinwheel-like structure on the Chirke infected cardamom plant. It is finally identified as a Maclura virus. And again, these ultra thin sectioning we are also using for this location of virus in the plant tissue. If you cut the section, and you will find the different locations like mesophyll cells and other cells by cutting the section, and you see in under electron microscope you will find these particles at different location of the virus. Again, we have a recently one of Dr. Rao's student, GP Rao's student, was working on Catharanthus roseus. It is a phytoplasma. So we have gone through this ultra thin sectioning of this particular sample, and you found this spherical bodies of phytoplasma on the phloem sieve tubes. Then another application, this we have this citrus greening this bacterium. It is a typical very serious disease of citrus in the entire country, our country, and having this typical symptoms is a mottling of the leaves. These are the typical symptoms. But when you cut these plants, you will find these bodies, pleomorphic bodies on this infected plants. Here also we have to cut the midrib only. It remains in the phloem. So after cutting, you will see these different pleomorphic bodies. So sometimes we are also having the samples like this bacteriophage, that also you can see under EM. These are the polyhedral bodies with long tail. Yes, this I want to show you the importance of electron microscope. So these are actually the three viruses we have reported after seeing in the electron microscope. First we saw the virus particle in the electron microscope, then we have characterized. Otherwise, if you don't have the microscope, you could not have done this work. But because of electron microscopy, these viruses we have reported. Dr. Y.S. Alawat, you might have heard his name in the citrus virology. His group, we worked on these viruses for the first time in India. So this is a citrus mosaic bedna virus. It is a double-stranded DNA virus reported first time in India in 1996. And another virus is the Indian citrus ring spot virus. It is reported from India only. No, it not reported from any other countries so far. And the symptoms are this chlorotic rings, yellow rings. And this another virus, this citrus yellow vein clearing virus. It is in the lime tree, you can see the vein flecking symptoms, yellow veins on the leaf. And these three viruses, now this virus was also from India only, but now it is has been reported from China and Pakistan and some other Gulf countries has been reported. So this was the importance of electron microscope. If you have the facility, you can have good information, good result. That's all. So इसमें बता रहा हूँ।
If you have any queries, you can ask. Any queries? Tospovirus, the antibody which we are making, against which we used to make antibodies, because this cod protein, the cod protein is inside that lipoprotein layer. So
Generally, if you are developing antibody, there are two procedures.